Welcome to All You Need to Know About Project Cortex webinar series with Knowledge, Microsoft, and Xillio. My name is Alistair Pujan. I'm the official moderator for the conversations that we've been having over the last 2 weeks with a bunch of industry experts, some people from Microsoft, and today I've got Rickard Engels on the show to welcome everyone to this webinar series.
Thank you, Alistair. I'm very pleased to be here. So let me explain why we are so excited about Cortex. Since our start in 2004, our goal has been to break down silos and to unlock the value of content. And we have tried our best during the many migrations we did by cleaning and enhancing the metadata. But it's actually often an uphill battle. Projects started driven by a combination of cost savings, compliance, and better collaboration. But during a project, the three ambitions often conflicted. And it was always cost savings that won the battle. The actual statement was just make sure we do not have to renew the legacy license again. With Cortex, this all changes. We recently received an RFP, for instance, from a defense agency wanting to replace OpenText with Microsoft 365. The RFP read, there are overlapping features, we don't want to pay double, please migrate. This is of course doing Cortex short, but it's 1000% true. Why pay double? But as you will learn in this webinar, Cortex is a lot more. Cortex allows for a new way of working, providing intelligence across your information landscape, breaking down silos and unlocking the value of content. In short, it's better collaboration, it's better compliance with the easiest business case in the world.
Is better than traditional enterprise content management. On today's show, or part of this webinar, we have Ian Story and Naomi Moneypenny, both from Microsoft. Ian, just a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, what your star sign is.
Awesome. So I don't actually know what my star sign is. That's a hard one. I was born in September, so my birthday's in a couple weeks. It would have been at Ignite, actually. So I think. Anyway, so I'm part of the leadership team for SharePoint and OneDrive. I'm responsible for how our team works with customers, with business partners, and industry analysts. I'm also on the board of directors for AIM. I've been in this industry for more than 20 years as a customer for about a dozen of those years, working at a competitor of Microsoft's for a few years, and now here at Microsoft for the last 4.
All right. And Naomi, we've known each other for a bit.
Just a little while after, yes. So I remember you before the elevator selfies. Is that correct? So it's all good. Naomi Moneypenny, for the folks that I don't know already, I have the distinct privilege of leading the product team for Project Cortex. That includes the work that we're doing in the content services space, in the knowledge and topic experiences space, and Microsoft Search inside of SharePoint and OneDrive.
And you've spent a lot of time working with SharePoint in general, right? It's not a new thing for you. I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely not a new thing. So let's see. I've been working with SharePoint since, actually, it's not that long. It's the beta of 2010, which was out in 2009.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
That's not old as many people in the SharePoint landia, but it's definitely been a passion for me for a very long time. And it's always been the work that I've done previously before joining Microsoft. When I was an MVP, like Alistair, I was able to always work on collaboration and knowledge inside of systems. And really, at that time, still applying some of the coolest AI that was around. So we worked a lot on expertise detection, think about vectors of information coming together. And so it's really interesting to me that the work that I'm doing at Microsoft really helps to reflect all of that journey that has led up to.
Yeah, I think I coined the phrase, or stole the phrase from Heather Newman, saying from Tahoe to today.
Yes.
Right? That's pretty much the world. My name is Alistair Pujan. I'm an advocate for Xillio. I'm working with Knowledge on this journey about Project Cortex and how to make your enterprise content management migrations simple. So moving from products like all the OpenText products like LiveLink, Hummingbird, and so forth. So on, moving that to SharePoint Online. Today, I just want to talk to the two of you a little bit about where Microsoft is going. I mean, we've seen Project Cortex launched last year at Ignite and all the artificial intelligence baked into the back of that, but I also think it's a precursor. And I love this because I remember reading a white paper that Microsoft put out in February of 2006 about wanting to play with the big boys, right? It was talking about MOS 2007 and ECM is the new white paper. Well, it was a white paper about ECM and how Microsoft is bringing enterprise content management to the masses through the use of SharePoint. That's even before SharePoint Online. Now, naturally, we know, and over the last 2 to 3 years, we've had AIM, Gartner, and Microsoft get together and literally say, well, ECM is dead, long live content services. This is the new world that we are now faced with. They've taken the same diagram that was from the ECM 101 poster, repurposed that and gave it different colors and new words, but yet we'll still have the same approach. So Ian, from your side, you mentioned earlier on that you sit on the board with John Mancini at AIM, and what is AIM's take on content services? I mean, we've seen a lot from Chris McNulty talk about what is content services, driving the charter program, driving all of that goodness around bringing SharePoint Online to the new world of ECM or ECM 2.0. What is AIM's take? How did that whole story come about? To coin the phrase, or to use
Sure.
in that sense.
Yeah, there we go.
How did they storyboard the whole? Well, we want content services. We no longer want ECM.
Yep. I think it was really Gartner who led the way with content services definition and so forth. Forrester right there with them, talking about transactional content services and business content services and collaborative content services and so forth. I think, from the AIM perspective, AIM talks about intelligent information management as kind of the thing that you do with content services, right? So AIM breaks that down into 3 areas of automation, protection and privacy, and insights. And as you think about, content services are a set of capabilities essentially to allow you to store and manage and share and collaborate and publish and on and on and on, a whole bunch of different services. That's what Gartner would say when you look at the content services Magic Quadrant, and what Forrester would say as well when you look at the Forrester Wave. So AIM says, hey, that technology of content services is definitely, what we call ECM these days. But when we think about what it is that people actually do with those content services, what they do is they intelligently manage their information. So AIM calls it IIM, AIM being the Association for Intelligent Information Management, right? And that's part of the challenge is the E in ECM, the enterprise part. Folks have realized that this technology is useful for more than the Fortune 500 or the 5 or 10,000 largest companies in the world. You look at folks even in the mid-sized and small business arena that need to more easily manage their content, find what they need, etc. And you find that ECM maybe was a little bit exclusive because it implied enterprise, and nobody really loves the idea of.
All right, Naomi, you've been building intranets and applications and on top of SharePoint for as long as I know you. The impact of content services and Project Cortex on your life. I mean, you've moved now across, well, sort of slid across to a different role and started doing things on the AI side and driving the Project Cortex engagement with customers as well as other MVPs. What's your take on where Microsoft is going with Cortex and traditional intranets? I mean, you look at the SharePoint Lookbook and that entire provisioning engine. Where is Microsoft going with this?
I think it really is that evolution of intelligence wherever people want to consume it inside of their organizations. I think that's what's very powerful. When I listen to Ian talk about content services, it's really about having those platform of capabilities and having them really be consumed in lots of different places wherever you're getting your work done. And I think that's kind of the major shift that's happened, whether it's the intranet, whether it's the way that we work. We used to be very siloed, right, within an application of like, I just live in Outlook or I just live in SharePoint or wherever it happened to be. And so now you're really seeing that, folks are working collaboratively across multiple different kinds of services. They need to be able to consume the information wherever they are, whether it's information, whether it's the knowledge, whether it's information coming into their organizations, connecting in lots of other data sources. And so you're seeing that whole thing happen, I think, between the types of applications that we build for people to do collaboration, but also coming together with business processes inside of your organization. So in my job where I lead Project Cortex, right, I lead the product development strategy and I look at sort of the future trends. And we talk a lot to customers. We talk to customers that are part of Project Cortex and part of Microsoft. We also talk to customers that have nothing to do with Microsoft, right? And so it's really interesting to learn from them and to see what their top priorities still are. And so we get this kind of balance of demands. And so I see the things people are asking for, well, I need to have a better way to do contracts processing, or I need to have a better way to process lots of information that's coming inside of my organization. And yet still the top needs that we hear about are peer-to-peer sharing. How do I identify expertise in my organization? How do I help people get up to speed faster? And so these are all tasks that both your intranet had, but it's also now every application that you interact with has. And so how do we make sure that that information, that knowledge is being brought forth in every single situation that you need as just part of your everyday work?
With Project Cortex, Ian, how do you see Microsoft addressing content services specific to Project Cortex?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Naomi hit on when we think about the old way that ECM was used, it said enterprise, but it often wasn't enterprise. It was really departmental, and there were a lot of silos. You know, different studies that have been done by different analysts talk about, you know, there were 15 or 20 different repositories on average in a decent sized organization, maybe more in a very large organization. And so it wasn't as enterprise as the name would imply. I think the opportunity with Cortex is really to consolidate a lot of that, get everyone working together. You know, that's one of the great strengths of Microsoft with the heritage we have in Microsoft Office and Outlook, and now with Microsoft Teams and so forth, get everyone really working together and collaborating. And that's where, you know, consolidating a lot of legacy systems into Cortex, you know, whether those are things that you have on premises or things that you have in other cloud providers, getting all of that information together so that you can work together and more easily find things and collaborate. I think that's really the promise of Cortex as we look at the capabilities that we're bringing and being able to mine and pull in information from other systems, or as Xillio and Knowledge do, migrate those other systems.
Last question on your side, Naomi. What's your favorite Project Cortex feature? Do you have one? Is it possible to have one? Just one?
No, it isn't. It really isn't. It would be like picking amongst my favorite children, and that would be terrible. So I would be an awful parent if I did that. But no, I think on the, let me see. So if I think about the content understanding side, which is really where we're concentrating on in this conversation. So I think just the ability for folks to create models themselves, right? So say I'm a subject matter expert and I run a business process, like I'm processing contracts or I'm processing, you know, purchase orders coming in or statements of work, that kind of stuff. The power that we are giving to be able to create new AI models to process the information and the way that you think about it is incredible. And I realize that it's not a simple task, right? This is not something as like, oh, click, 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 and I'm done, right? You're going to invest an hour, maybe 2 hours into actually building a model that can really help you. But I think that once you do that, it's incredible because not only do you get the use of that model in that for that specific business process, other people can come in and contribute on top of it. And then the great thing is that that knowledge that was in your head about how to read a contract and what's valuable is actually then encoded into a model. And so that model becomes a form of knowledge, a new form of knowledge inside of your organization. And so we've got this path that goes from content services. How do I process information come in? How do I make things more efficient, more productive, you know, saving me time and saving me money? And then how do I help you transform that into knowledge that's reusable inside of your organization? And so I think it's just incredibly powerful direction. And it really, you know, it echoes the direction and journey that we've been on for a very long time. It's just that now the technology can actually deliver on these.
Yeah. Ian, one last question. Cortex has the ability to really break down these silos and replace departmental content management systems into a company-wide solution. And is this really the new way Microsoft's seeing the world working?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've seen customers just over and over and over trying to integrate these systems together, trying to make them work with their ERP system or their CRM system and so forth, and really struggling, you know, having to become development shops in themselves just to continue to upgrade and maintain their different repositories of content. You know, I talk to friends that still work on the customer side, and they talk to me about oh, we were up till 2 a.m. patching our systems, and we have to do that again this weekend because we've got another system, and we have to do it again next weekend because we've got another system, and so forth. It's taken IT from really driving value to just maintaining all these different systems and trying to keep them working together and linked together and so forth. And so we think get those old on-prem and cloud systems and get those consolidated into Cortex. We can obviously do things to search and crawl that content and pull that content in with a lot of the work that Naomi's team is doing. But when we talk about really what you can do to save your company money and get your IT back to really driving value instead of just patching things all night, all weekend, every week, we think that there's a great opportunity again using the technology and tools that Xillio and Knowledge Lake make to bring that content into Project Cortex, into Microsoft 365, and much more easily collaborate and work with it.
I'd just like to thank both of you for spending some time with me today, and we'll chat to everyone soon. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Welcome to All You Need to Know About Project Cortex. My name is Alistair Pugin, and I'm your host. And on today's show, we've got Rebecka. How do I say your surname? I don't know how to pronounce that surname.
English pronunciation, Isaksson, is fine.
Okay, so the K is not an issue, right?
No, that's not bad. You can say Isaksson. I listen to that.
And then we've got the traveling Wolverine at the bottom there, Chris McNulty.
Alistair, as always, good to catch up. How are you?
I'm good. Chris, from your side, just a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, why there are hay bales in your background, and is it still Kansas where you are?
So great to see everyone. I'm Chris McNulty. I'm Director of Product Marketing on the Microsoft 365 team, which means I'm privileged to get to work with the folks who are responsible for Project Cortex, something we have been working on for the past 3 years, and we're really excited to be finally taking the wraps off of it, coming up at Microsoft Ignite and beyond. So I am based in the Seattle area. In ordinary times, I'm usually on the Redmond campus. Today I'm at my house about 10 minutes away. Behind me is a selection of one of my myriad of photographs from my 4 trips across the country for family members this summer. So the good news about coronavirus, if there is a silver lining to it, is it's gotten me out to see places like Montana and Kansas and Nebraska that I ordinarily am just glimpsing through the window of an airliner. So yeah, great to be here today.
Rebecka, a bit about you.
Yeah, I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager on the same team as Chris, but my responsibility is knowledge in Microsoft 365. So I'm really looking at knowledge and knowledge solutions, knowledge business value across the Microsoft 365 suite. So that's obviously Project Cortex, our hero, that I am personally super excited about because I have been in knowledge management and in the knowledge space for a while now and haven't seen anything like it. But I'm also focused on SharePoint, Microsoft Search, Yammer, and Tree.
Yeah, we did earlier.
Stockholm, Sweden.
So, Chris, Project Cortex, right? When I think Project Cortex, I think you. So what is Project Cortex really? I mean, you've driven this huge resurgence of what I like to call ECM 2.0, or the rest of the world, including AIM and Gartner, calling it content services. So what is Project Cortex at its core?
So great question. So when we launched Project Cortex 3 years ago, we've been looking around our product mix, studying analyst reports, talking to our customers, and we recognized that we did have an opportunity to do more with content and content management. And despite the fact that we're proud of how we sit in the analyst rankings year over year, seeing continuous progress, we knew that the cloud transformations that many of our customers have joined us on during the past decade, bringing some new capabilities to light that would let us do more with things like using AI to deal with capture, content classification, to build a much richer set of capabilities around the patterns and practices that had already been established earlier with Microsoft SharePoint. So this being Microsoft, we are customer driven, and we've had lots of focus groups and preview programs and one-on-one customer interviews. My colleague in engineering, Naomi Moneypenny, and I have spoken to hundreds of customers in the past 3 years. And along the way, we've really become convicted that people need to do more than just manage content. ECM in its best form, when John Mancini and AIM came up with the term ECM years ago, you're really talking about that set of capabilities to manage, orchestrate, capture, enrich, deliver, archive, and sustain, and then delete information throughout its lifespan, so it's most useful when it's most needed. And at its worst, it's a really expensive way to stick documents that no one ever wants to look at. We know that there's so much more that we can do than just managing content for content's sake. And one thing that we're really convicted about is that content needs to be turned into knowledge. That being able to use content and the patterns that people establish working with it really informs a way that we can drive knowledge and insights forward to people as they need it through the applications they already have. And so Project Cortex is a broad range of investments to deliver these capabilities throughout Microsoft 365.
It's an interesting time for SharePoint, because at the root of Project Cortex, from a content repository perspective, SharePoint is still that place where you put things, and it's still there, right? But talking about knowledge and insights, and for me, having Microsoft sort of move into the knowledge management space, not just the portal space. Rebecka, you were mentioning something earlier on about knowledge and insights and where that is going with Microsoft, and you being part of the team now, you're talking a lot about a knowledge economy and how you can actually build on top of insights from a knowledge management perspective. Where do you see that in its current manifestation inside of Microsoft 365?
Well, I think, to take a look from the outside and in a little bit, where we're at right now, we've always been encountering changes in the marketplace, etc., right? And change is not new. It happens all around us all the time. But in the last couple of years, it seems that change keeps hitting us with higher frequency and a lot bigger impact and much more random. So we've started talking a lot about that volatility that's all around us now. There's demographics changing, and there's pandemics, and there's all of these things that we are painfully aware of on a personal, professional, and organizational level. So from our point of view, and the way we look at the importance of knowledge and insights and tying knowledge and insights together, is that for organizations to be able to adapt and to be flexible enough, to be agile enough to proactively try to counter some of those changes and reskill and upskill when those changes hit us, since they're not cyclical anymore, right? They're so random. We really have to empower the people in our organization, because that's the heart of our organization. So we need to empower them with the knowledge that they need when they need it, without forcing them to switch back and forth between different repositories and knowledge bases and applications and lose that important time and lose the focus. But it's not only pushing the knowledge to them, it's also enabling them with intelligent integrated search, because there are times when we don't know what we don't know, and that's great. We have something like Project Cortex that can now tell us that here's something that you should probably know about, or that you are probably interested in. But we also have the intelligent integrated search, which is when we do know what we don't know. And then we need a quick way and a simple way to be able to look for that without being a search query expert, or without having to know where to look for what or who to ask for what. So tying search and Cortex together, but then also bringing in the insights that we get through the Microsoft Graph. All of the signals that the graph pulls from who I'm working with, who I'm talking to, what I'm working on, and how it can help us identify patterns and practices that make some teams more productive and more efficient, more successful than others, but also for me on a personal level to help me manage my time better and help me understand what work practices and patterns that I myself have that might not be particularly healthy for me. Like, telling me that you've now worked every Saturday and Sunday for the last 2 months. You might want to book some focus time, so that you can get more work done throughout your normal hours, things like that. And that's where that whole power comes together in Microsoft 365.
So Project Cortex is not just about entity modeling and entity extraction, right? It's a bit more.
Sure, but that's definitely a great place to start talking about what we're bringing out into market. Cortex is covering a broad range of capabilities, and the first sets of capabilities coming out of Project Cortex are coming out into the market in a handful of weeks. We've been working with about 70 or so preview customers over the past year to year and a half. They've been running Cortex for most of that time. We put those customers into production back in August. So the first set of capabilities are solving the problem of how do you manage content? How do you recognize it? How do you capture it? How do you tag it? And how do you teach the cloud to use AI to read the documents for me so that I don't have to? Because there's just so much that people have to pay attention to now. How can we optimize the quality of your information, content, knowledge transactions so you can get back to doing the things that matter most to your success? So Cortex is doing those things that you mentioned, entity modeling, being able to look at digital assets like pictures, structured documents like forms and invoices, and unstructured documents like contracts to say, this looks like a purchase order, and I probably want to pull out the date, the supplier number, and the dollar value so that I can do something important with it. And that doing something important may be as simple as tagging it so that my teammates can find it later. Or it may be sending it into an alert and approval cycle so that the right business processes can be automated. Or it may be attaching the right levels of compliance policy to it so I can minimize risk and maximize people's confidence in the security they have around their documents.
No, look, I'm excited for the future of Project Cortex and where it's going and how it can bring people together based on communities of practice. I remember I used to do a presentation on knowledge management back in the days when I used to work with OpenText, and we used a story about the US Postal Service where more than 60% of the US Postal Service back in, I think it was 2006, was about to retire, and there was no way for them to grab the tacit knowledge of someone being able to know that there's a dog at that gate over there, so you need to cross the road to carry on. So harnessing that employee knowledge, because it was a thing, right? And with what you said, Chris, and with what you said, Rebecka, on how you are actually harnessing knowledge based on daily patterns, because that's what it's about, right? It's being able to map out a pattern, and you'll be able to build statistical analysis and trend mapping on specific patterns based on what the usage and what the user is doing every day inside of Word, inside of Outlook, inside of Teams, inside of Yammer, inside of SharePoint, inside of OneDrive. And you are able to surface that data so that you can give organizations a better view of how to manage, mitigate, and administer not only their intellectual property, but the property of the organization as well. So what's left, Rebecka? What's left for Microsoft this year when it comes to Project Cortex?
Oh, what's left? We've just started. This is just the beginning. We're getting ready to launch. I guess that's kind of the end of the beginning of a long journey, I think. I think one thing that you said earlier on that really resonated with me was ECM 2.0 or 2.0. And that's how I view knowledge in Microsoft 365, not just Cortex, but the entire suite of knowledge solutions, is that whereas traditional ECM is very content-centric, this is actually now people-centric. It puts the person in the center and it pushes the information. So where the traditional ECM is very much you have to know where to look for what, and you have to go and find the information and pull it to you, we're now pushing it to you. We're making it available to you in the flow of your daily work, right? So you don't have to do all that context switching. And I think that is super, super important. And I think that's super powerful. So yeah, I guess that's where, you know, that's where my heart and soul is. It's, you know, really helping people to not have to get frustrated, waste time, and just carry on with their work and have everything at their fingertips.
Yeah. No, Alistair, one of the things, you know, I'm really hopeful about with Cortex, if you think about kind of the history with SharePoint or even OneDrive, is that no two people have the same way of approaching an information problem, if you will.
Yeah.
Some people store everything in OneDrive. Some people put things in folders in SharePoint. Some people use metadata. It's a very heterogeneous and in some ways fragmented environment. And so the power of Cortex is being able to create these common models that you can deploy anywhere you need to be able to impose a standardized way of classifying information so that I don't have to remember where to put it or to add these tags, or I can get all of that built for me, because enriching content is one of the important building blocks for being able to convert that content into knowledge. Earlier this year, we rolled out a bunch of modernizations to our taxonomy services, formerly managed metadata services, to allow you to manage classification and content types in a much more streamlined manner. And Cortex is bringing new capabilities to help administrators govern those processes. So all of this is helping impose order on information that's coming inside Microsoft 365. And you know, we sort of have to acknowledge, you know, we have many great partners like Xillio who are able to extend that transformation by taking information that lives off cloud or other clouds and bring them into Microsoft 365 to preserve, you know, everything that was encoded in some of those legacy systems and make it more addressable. One of the things that we're doing alongside that is we know that you're not going to unify everything inside Microsoft, despite what we might ask for. And so we're also rolling out our new set of graph-based content connectors to allow you to remotely reach out and index information that might live in a file share or SQL Server or ServiceNow, and bring that into the graph to make it searchable and usable. And soon we're going to introduce the rest of Cortex's capabilities for classifying, for exposing that as knowledge to remote content alongside the information that you have in Microsoft 365 today.
Now, that was actually going to be my last words from your side, Rebecka.
Well, maybe one thing. Since in a previous life, I managed the user adoption and the business requirements for what used to be, at least, the largest SharePoint application internally in Microsoft. So a content and collaboration platform that we use in our professional services organization. And I am so happy to finally have technology that eliminates the need for me to understand and know a corporate taxonomy and have to waste time tagging stuff, because I'm also very lazy on a personal note. Like, I don't like to do stuff that doesn't immediately add value. And I do understand it adds value for me to tag stuff so others can find it. But if the system can do that for me, so I can spend my time doing something more, you know, valuable, that's another thing that makes me super excited, and I think we should definitely call out, because I also know that taxonomies and getting people to use them or getting people to tag stuff, and for people to have to do that is frustrating on every level of the organization. So I think I want to call that one out.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Rebecka, for spending time with me on this webinar. And
we'll see you in 2021.
Good to see you. Be well.
Yeah. Take care.
Cool. Cheers, guys. Welcome to the series where we talk about all you need to know about Project Cortex and why Cortex is a better alternative for legacy enterprise content management services. In today's episode, let's call it an episode, because I've got a good friend of mine, Simon Denton, on the call. Simon, just a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what your star sign is, what your favorite color is. I'm assuming it's blue.
Alice, you asked a little bit about me, right? Okay, but anyway.
Smidget, yeah.
Hi, I'm Simon Denton. I'm the Productivity Applications Architect at a company called McDonald. I'm a global engineering company. So I'm responsible for all things Office 365, including the rollout and deployment of Project Cortex.
But you're an engineer, though, by trade, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm a civil engineer by trade. It was about 4, 5, 6 years ago. I was building tunnels, roads, and railways for real. So I've made that shift into the kind of virtual building things.
So your experience with Office 365 to date, you're doing quite Mott's got huge systems. I'm dealing with Mott in South Africa currently, and just having a look at the underpinnings of what makes up your organization. It's no small task to take on to move anything anywhere, never mind rolling out something like Office 365.
Yeah, we have around 16,000 employees globally. About 140 permanent locations and 400 temporary locations and 76 different domains. You name it. Yeah, it can be like a drunk spider's web. You're trying to find your way around it, right? There's not a lot of order in the chaos, but we worked super hard to try and straighten things out from day one. And that I set out as the first principle is we've got to keep this straight, simple, and as close to out of the box as possible to remove the potential for future complications.
But the size of your organization, you must have a lot of sort of content repositories that you have to maintain. If you've got 76 domains, I mean, you've probably got a spreadsheet that's printed, that's put into a fire-retarded safe, just so that you know if the world ends, right, you can go back to the safe and know what domains you own.
It's not a fireproof safe, Alistair. You remember the end scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, right?
Yeah.
And when they're wheeling the Ark into the great big storage, we do have facilities like that still, right?
Okay. It's like a bunker.
We do have located around the world. I mean, we've been operating for around 100 years now. So we have 100 years worth of engineering history from almost carved on tablets, but blueprints, hand-drawn drawings, all the way through to discs the size of small cars, all the way up. So we have all that sort of information. So we have a lot of content. I mean, we've got about 340 terabytes in SharePoint at the moment. We've got another 300 or so in a legacy ECM. I can point to storage cupboards with 3, 4, 5 petabytes of offline storage, USB drives, tapes, discs.
Microfilm.
Yeah, microfilm, 5.25-inch discs, it's all there, right? And that's just in one office that I can point to. There's a cupboard with 2 petabytes of data just secured, right?
Yeah, that's crazy, right? But I mean, moving to the cloud, moving to Office 365, it must be a huge undertaking. It's what sort of impact has it had for you, and also for the staff that you work with daily, and then also the greater 16,000 people in your organization adopting something like Office 365?
To be honest, I think it wasn't as difficult an operation as maybe people are led to believe, right? And I think, yes, we did focus a lot on the wiring behind the scenes and making sure that we didn't have a traditional hub and spoke network model. Now, it takes a long time to unpick that, but actually, once you unpick that process, actually moving to the cloud is actually quite a straightforward process. Just get your data from your office to the nearest touch point with Microsoft and away you go. So actually, the onboarding journey for our staff when we're moving from our legacy systems to Office 365, it was just a series of baby steps. We brought them on because we had made some of the changes to infrastructure behind the scenes. It was quite easy, actually. It was quite natural. And if we take the current context, it's been quite liberating. It's been amazing this year that we've been able to not only be able to support bring your own device from effectively from day one, but when situations change where we've had to ask our staff to work from home for extended periods of time, the business has hardly been interrupted through the process because they can use their own device, their data's in the cloud, it's secure, it's all backed up, and we've kept things close out of the box as possible. So there's little annoying complications that we've introduced to get in the way. So actually, it's not been. I hate this question because it makes me sound too smug, and I'm not smug. It's been quite easy actually. And
I suppose it's, if you do the right planning and preparation up front, there's a logical flow of things. There's a logical steps that you take. There's milestones and measurements that it's a go, no go. So, I think also in your case, you've still got quite a bit of legacy on-prem. Have you moved stuff to Azure?
Yeah, so we do have a relatively large on-prem footprint in terms of storage. We've moved. Virtually all of our virtual infrastructure is now in Azure. So we've worked really hard to unload our own data centers and push servers and things up into the cloud. We do have, so about 240 to about 300 terabytes of content still in our data centers associated with legacy HCM. So we're currently migrating that at the moment to a mixture of SharePoint for live content that people are still working on, and for the inactive content, because the ECM has been around for about a decade, that's going to Azure, and we're sending that Azure storage with a relatively complex migration process because we want to keep all the audit trails and all the rich information that goes with it. So, I would see by the end of 2021, the only real footprint we'll probably have in our data centers is for content that's needed for security purposes, the stuff you can sort of never put in the cloud, and things like border controllers and things like that when you're dealing with voice for teams and things like that. We've had hardly any footprint in our own data centers.
So from a complexity perspective, when you start talking about you're doing these crazy, these humongous migrations, terabytes and terabytes. I've dealt with customers who've got 100 terabytes and they don't know what to do. You're talking about petabytes. That will eventually get into it. And you mentioned earlier on you don't want to sound like you snobbish about demystifying all of this because of your planning, but it can't be that simple. With so much data, there must be so much metadata with it and all of those things. And you just bring it, I'll do it, right? I'll show you how to do it.
I think people get hung up on the hard bit is not the content itself, right? The actual volume of content. Because there's only real two decision points, right? Do you send that over the wire? And can I send that as quickly over the wire as possible without choking my existing connections? Or do I lift and shift? And that's the easy, that is the easy bit decision point, I feel, with content. And one of the difficult conversations we had to have around that element was to say to people that we're moving content. It's not like when you're at home and your Xbox updates a game and it's a 400 gig game and it does it, it doesn't, right? If this is corporate data, there's lots of checks and balances that networks do, and things don't flow as quickly as possible backwards and forwards. So once you manage that conversation, that decision point's easy. How much more wire can take, and then versus lift and shift. Now after lift and shift, I think I would continually advocate lift and shift. I think that's a much easier way, even with the smaller boxes. Just we've got them on rotation, so we just take a box, fill it up, send it off, get the next one, fill it up, send it off, and we're doing it every couple of weeks, and it's brilliant.
Okay.
The hard bit is what you do with the metadata. Which bits of metadata you keep, and where do you put it? I took the decision that I wanted a complete chain of custody to the process. I wanted to know that when we touch the content, where we put the content, I wanted to pick up all the metadata. So the previous version histories, who's touched what, when and how. And I wanted to be able to store that because then in 15 years' time, if someone came to me and say, well, someone built this, tell me who did it, when they did it, who accessed it, I can find information. And the hard part of the process is determining how to get that data and where to put it. And actually, I very consciously decided to separate the content out. That will go to Azure storage, go to blob storage, and the rest of it is currently going to Azure SQL at the moment.
Yeah.
So piping into, but ultimately I think it's going to be Cosmos just for scale, and we'll switch over to that.
So, you guys were featured during Ignite keynote last year with Satya. The impact of Microsoft talking about Project Cortex and all the AI baked into the back around entity modeling and entity extraction. What has your experience has been with Project Cortex, and how you are able to build that AI up from an ML perspective so that you've got this body of knowledge that can do proper data extraction and entity extraction going forward into the environment that you have?
Yeah, I think the Project Cortex as technology is really important because we're a project delivery organisation. We deliver about 10,000 projects per year, and each of those projects is an information silo. And you've got to find ways of getting the good information out of those silos and respecting the security parameter and lifting it up. We had built our own sort of Cortex V0, which required our engineers to sort of volunteer information to be shared out. But what Cortex is allowing us to do is we scan across all of those repositories still and actually indicate, well, actually this could be of interest, right? These suggestions, this bit of content could be of interest. And we can then reinforce and join that with the signals from the engineers who actually saying, actually, I want to share this, right? I want to bring it together. So we're finding Cortex, it does take some time to, I wouldn't say learn about the organisation, it's not quite a learning entity yet, if you see what I mean. It takes a while for it to develop a picture with your assistance of what is appropriate and what is not. But it's turning into a great suggestion engine, and it's turning into a great way of understanding what the real pulse of the organisation is in terms of what we're doing. So we've been experimenting with bridge inspection records. So when we take a customer will come to us and say, can you look at the maintenance of this bridge? Can you maybe breathe new life into it, expand its life? Here's a box full of paper drawings, documents. Scan them all, process them. There's 100 years worth of history. And what the engineers need to do then is pick out all the relevant salient points from that. So what we've been doing is conducting experiments using the content centers to look at, can we get the salient points from these PDFs or from the scanned images and build a body of knowledge about the assets? This is not organisation knowledge, but knowledge about a particular asset, and then use the metadata that we generate from that.
Yeah, I think it's more, and we were speaking to Knowledge Lake earlier, about 2 weeks ago, about how Knowledge Lake complements something like Project Cortex. Because naturally, when you start looking at optical character recognition or any type of recognition, pick it, OMR, ICR, OCR, it's really about that form type recognition. There's AI baked into it, and it's going to identify this document as something. You know, it could be a zonal stack on the document. So in your case, if you're doing some form of, let's identify this bridge, there would be a bridge ID that's been stuck onto all of these documents. And naturally, you would go in search of that to bring that together. Might be somewhere on the page. It's not zonal because it's unstructured content. And being able to read through that and provide suggestions based on that, that's a superpower that I haven't seen around. Because as much as you can build intelligence to scanning the paper and extracting data, you still need to give it a template. Whereas with Cortex and the knowledge sense and the knowledge center stuff, it will do that for you automatically.
Yeah, and I think the fact it's coupled into Power Automate, what I do like is there are these solutions out there that they will OCR, they scan your documents, but it's very much, I'm probably doing them with this service, it's very much like, here's something we know about, like an invoice, here's the output, and once you set it up, it just does it. Yeah. And actually what we want to do is actually, we think this is this, so we can set up some models for different types of documents, but then we want to have a process flow, and we want metadata to appear in different locations. The fact that you can use Power Automate, say, well, actually do a first skim of all the documents, move them into the right places. Once you move them into the right places, apply another model to those documents, and then extract data and put them into SharePoint lists or wherever. And that's the real superpower is that flexibility. It is just a building block.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I had a question about looking at complex migrations, and you've just simplified all of this by using the right sort of tooling, and also making sure that you do all the planning up front.
Yeah, I do have a simple block model, which is what we've dealt with. That it is relatively simple. It fits on one page like 4 about how we take content from whichever repository. Because when I set out the strategy for migration, I wanted something that was as agnostic as possible. I wanted something that, if I moved legacy ACM in 2020, I want to be able to move something else in 2021 by just plugging the migration solutions into it, rather than getting told to do this, that, and work my way through. I wanted something to be able to offer migration as a service. So I want to actually reverse the flows. I want to be able to take stuff out of SharePoint and put it into Azure when it's getting old. Yeah. And so be able to turn the piece of paper upside down effectively and just run it back through the sausage nut. So it did take a little bit of thinking about, but it does break down to where do you want to put your metadata, how do you want to store it, how do you want to access it. Yeah. I didn't want to do the really complicated stuff, and I think where people do extra stuff. I want to copy the permissions. I want to copy the permissions from the old stuff to the new world. So, well, half these people probably don't exist. Is your security posture exactly the same as it was when you dreamt that one up? I don't think it is. Yeah. Keep it simple. Move it, put it in, and adjust.
All right, and on that note, I think that's it. Thanks so much for your time, Simon. And I'm going to miss you this year at Ignite, because we're all sitting at our desks delivering sessions, right?
Yes, we are. Yeah, I am going to miss you, and I'm going to miss my brother from down under as well. So yeah.
All right, well, thanks for your time, and we'll catch up with you soon. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah, cheers, Alex.
Welcome to All You Need to Know About Project Cortex. And on today's call, webinar, whatever you want to call it, the show, episode of All You Need to Know About Project Cortex, we've got, how do I say your name? It's Sjoerd. Sjoerd. Alkema, right?
Alkema, yes.
Alkema.
Yeah.
So Sjoerd, just a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? What is your favorite color in the world? Where do you see everything going?
Yes, man. So my name is Sjoerd. I'm from the Netherlands, and actually Sjoerd is a typical Dutch name. Quite hard for anybody else apart from Dutch people to pronounce. I'm the director of content services with Xillio. My favorite color, of course, is Xillio blue. I've been here with Xillio for 6 years, and responsible for our migration services and whatever we do within content services area. And my background is in enterprise content management, which, of course, you know very well too, Alistair. I've been in that space for now 15 years, around 15 years. It's really where I started working in when I came from high school, you can say, or from university, of course. Yeah.
And now you work for a company that does these crazy, huge, monumental migrations from legacy ECM systems to something like SharePoint Online. I mean, that's a huge undertaking. And before before Rick had reached out and said, hey, come do some stuff with us, I did not know that this was possible. So traditionally, just tell me a little bit about migrating from a legacy ECM like a LiveLink or a FileNet or a Lotus Notes. I mean, I've done some Notes stuff, but I mean, it must be such a big thing for you guys to do.
It is. And indeed, so with my background, I also understand that all these systems have been around for quite some time. So they're really embedded and really connected to all the processes within these organizations. So they are quite complex, I would say, for sure. Mostly because of the history and how it has been implemented, and every one of them is customized, of course. That's typically what happened back in the days. So yeah, complex they are, but I wouldn't say that they are really difficult. I mean, if you know what you're doing, if you have the right approach, if you also make it important enough from the organization side, right? That's important. Then then it's doable. And I mean, we know we've done so many already. So so that's one. What I wanted to add to that, I mean, it's doable. We've been doing it quite some time, also from legacy ECM to more modern ECM, of course. But what we see right now, especially with Microsoft being more ready with the whole Cortex, Project Cortex, that's being launched. Yeah, now it's really not that difficult anymore. And especially from the point of view from the organizations, because I mean, technically, if you have the right software, right approach, right people, yeah, it can be done. But it also needs to fit in the receiving system, right? It needs to fit there, and that's mostly where the real challenge is. We see. So that's also part of our consulting efforts to advise on that. And how are you going to do the mapping, restructuring? How are you going to do those workflows in your new system? My hope and my thinking for sure is that that's going to be so much easier with the whole Cortex situation in the future. What is very important is to start with an analysis of what there is in that system, what there is right now. So you could say that every migration follows an ETL approach, right? Extract. You need to get out the data, you need to transform, you need to do something with it, then load it into the new system. But what we feel that is very important is to put the A in between the E and T, right? So after extraction, you want to analyze, you want to do a discovery on what you have, and together with the customer right away, then you're going to see, how does this project look? So from the analysis, we typically define a detailed migration approach and a detailed migration plan. You want to see what is possible, what is not possible, where can we add value, where do we need to do restructuring, where can we clean up, where can we move these things to the portal that are active, or the others to an archive you want to set up in Azure. So that's typically all coming from the analysis. So that's the first step.
All right. Well, thank you, Sjoerd, for spending some time with us today, and we'll hope to catch you soon. Cheers, cheers.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome to all you need to know about Project Cortex. And so just a little bit about yourself, where you are from, who you work for. Well, everyone can see that, your star sign, your favorite color. Yeah, pick one.
You got it. My name is Jason. I live in St. Louis. I work for a company called Knowledge. I've been here for 15 years. I'm currently in charge of the product team, working with some amazing people doing some amazing work for our platform. So excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Speaking of paper, I mean, that's my experience with Knowledge Lake from back in the early 2000s or 2007. Is paper still relevant today? I mean, that's a big question.
Yeah, for sure. The idea of the paperless office that we've all been chasing for decades is a great one and worth fighting for. But a lot of things are sort of outside of an organization's control. We think about the business processes that we help most customers with. Most of that content that drives those processes, invoices, claims, loans, hiring documents, etc., they usually originate outside of an office, right? They're created by somebody else or filled in or signed by somebody else. And we don't really have an opportunity to digitize those. I saw the other day, there was a report globally, for the first time ever, we sent 50.3% of invoices electronically for the first time ever. And electronically sent invoices outnumbered paper sent, but paper sent invoices are still 49.7%. If my math holds up there. So it's still a ton, right? But even those digital documents, right, they still need to be dealt with. Like, a PDF probably isn't going to be folded in half or have coffee spilt on it. So there's an advantage there for sure. But that important information is still, it's the information that's critical to those business processes. They're still locked inside of that document, paper or otherwise. You know, that information still needs to be liberated.
But it's not only, I used to call it back in the old days, I used to call it, it's a work object, right? It's no longer just about that physical piece of paper. It could be an electronic document that's come in that someone's used Adobe to fill in. And I've got a customer in the Eastern Cape in South Africa that still produces 100 million pages a year. You know, so I don't think the physicality of the paper might disappear because someone's going to take a picture and upload it with OneDrive, but processing that object is still there. And for me, that leads into the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was when we look at what Knowledge Lake has done over the last 5 to 7 years around moving away from a traditional paper-based process organization to the stuff that you're doing around RPA. I mean, is that the motion that you see moving forward when it comes to what you're doing as an organization?
Yeah, I think, well, a couple of things. So first, just collecting paper and storing it electronically and making it searchable and findable, that has tons of value for sure. You know, people on average, workers here in the United States still spend 30% of their time hunting down paper, hunting down information. So it's just the idea of being able to store a document digitally, have it as an official record, be able to find it easily, still highly valuable. But, you know, I think the way we see the trend in the marketplace going is it's continuing to apply pressure around removing manual processes, right? Anything manual, anything a human has to do that's just sitting there typing keyboard, you know, keying in data, whether that's, you know, indexing or classifying a document to be stored, or whether it's typing in information to an ERP system. Humans have much more valuable things to do with their day, right? They have much more to society to contribute than just sitting there and keying data. So I think, you know, trends like RPA, workflow, automation, machine learning for, you know, intelligent capture, I think those are the direction that we're heading.
And I mean, Project Cortex is quite an interesting take at where Microsoft is going with building out intelligent automation, more so than anything they've ever done before. I mean, they've got the UI flows coming through. They're doing a lot of sort of entity modeling. A lot of the stuff that they're building is what traditional image capture solutions have been doing for the last 10 years, right? So we scan in a template and then we tell it to go interrogate mark recognition to identify zones on a page, and then based on that, we build in we forward that onto a rules engine. The rules engine says, go do this with that.
Right.
And we're seeing that come through with Cortex on the entity modeling side. So go find a salutation, and chances are the person's name is next to the salutation.
Right.
From a Knowledge Lake perspective, I mean, you're moving into the RPA space. You've got products in that space. How do you see Knowledge Lake complementing what Microsoft is doing in and with Project Cortex?
Yeah, great question. So I think Knowledge Lake is thrilled at the direction Microsoft is going. Specifically from the world of documents perspective, they're making great investments around unstructured documents. So Knowledge Lake's sort of core wheelhouse are what we would call structured and semi-structured type documents, right? Documents that are mostly laid out the same. So you think about things like a loan document or an invoice or an I-9 form. We would consider those like structured and semi-structured documents. Unstructured documents are really, really difficult to deal with, and Microsoft's making really great investments there. Think of a process like claims, right? With a claim, it often involves tons of letters, and somewhere in that letter is critical for the purpose of adjudicating that claim, and it's highly instructive. Somewhere in that letter is a 10-digit claim number and a policyholder's name. And the work that they're doing to be able to identify that document, classify it, and go find that critical information inside of it is brilliant and much needed. And we're excited how it's going to enhance our offering. In the area of the knowledge management stuff, I think it's a really interesting new look at being able to aggregate data and provide information, not when a user has to go search for it, but without them even searching for it, just surfacing it when they need it right in front of their face. And, you know, we view Knowledge Lake as we're the delivery truck that drops off the raw material of documents and metadata to the refinery of Cortex to let the AI tool sort of refine it and machine it into from raw materials into insights.
Yeah, you still got to get the content in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Cortex only works with content in the silo.
Right.
That's not going to work with content outside of that. So I see huge value in being able to pre-stage content before it gets there with some form of metadata extraction so that it's able to amplify the rules engine that is Project Cortex from an AI perspective and ML perspective so that you can actually teach Cortex based on specific rules that your product actually pushes into SharePoint Online.
Yeah.
SharePoint Online.
Yeah, amplification I think is the perfect word there, right? Is being able to take the data that we're able to suck out of those documents. We know that 80% of data inside of an organization is unstructured, right? 20% of it is the stuff sitting in ERP systems and CRM and things like that. Yeah. But that critical 80%, right? That's what Cortex is after, to be able to provide insights into what's sort of locked in there.
Yeah. Any final comments from you around where you see Project Cortex going? What are you excited about? Being that Inspire is around the corner. Well, Ignite is around the corner, not Inspire. I keep getting them too mixed up.
Microsoft's a leader in the content services space, and I think Cortex is going to continue to accelerate them on that trajectory. Companies like Xillio and Knowledge Lake, I think we're proud to be part of that ecosystem and part of their success. If you read the Gartner report, it says, look, Microsoft's success in this space is largely due to its partner community. And that includes system integrators, that includes ISVs like Knowledge Lake and Xillio, that includes the MVP community like yourself. And they've built a really great ecosystem and we're excited to be a part of it. We've been doing this content management game around SharePoint for a long time. We pride ourselves on being one of the first to it. And I think sort of in closing, the overriding theme, I hope that customers walk away from this talk track. These legacy ECM systems that they have in place that haven't been updated in probably a year or two, and somebody probably looks at it as a house of cards, like don't mention it, might fall apart. They're not that hard to replace. It can be done, and on the other side of that is a new, modern, powered by machine learning, AI, and RPA cloud platform that can really transform an organization, really increase their, velocity and innovation inside their organization. And I think a lot of people get nervous. It's, it seems dangerous. Like, well, we've been using that for so long. How do we just unplug it? It is possible. And the choice of Knowledge Lake and Microsoft is a safe one for the future. And, they can make an investment in this technology and know that they'll be protected. It's a good future choice, good future bet.
All right. Well, Jason, thanks for your time today, and we'll catch you somewhere in the world, hopefully soon, in person.
Yeah.
Probably like 2022 or something. Who knows? But thanks for your time, and we'll chat to you soon. Cheers. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks. See ya.
Well, thanks everyone for spending time with us today on all things Project Cortex. We hope that you've got a better feel for when wanting to move to Project Cortex, where Project Cortex is going, and also what tooling is available to assist you when moving into Project Cortex. Last words from your side, Rickett?
This was absolutely amazing. I mean, we heard so many fantastic quotes like enterprise content management was actually document content management. It was a departmental system to the worst part of ECM to the best part of ECM. The rebirth of knowledge management, kind of the naming definition. I think this was an absolutely amazing webinar, and I think it is very clear that Cortex is an absolute game changer, and it will allow to change the way people work.
Well, thanks a lot for everyone that's stuck around for however long this webinar series is, and we'll hope to see you online or at a in-person event soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap, people. Thank you for sticking around. Any questions, please drop it in the Q&A chat. While we wait, Ian, you've been around for quite some time, and this is the second version of the live event that we've published. What is your take on where Project Cortex, the customer side? We saw earlier on in the first version of this that a lot of people were asking about best practices. Where's Microsoft going with what they're doing around best practice implementation of content services using Project Cortex? Because it's all new. We've got this big AI engine and machine learning engine in the background, and we're throwing a lot of content at it. Where's that all going?
Yeah, I would say, I was a customer for, I don't know, a dozen years, give or take, before I came over to the Microsoft kind of vendor side of things. Washington Mutual, JP Morgan Chase, Weyerhaeuser, big Fortune 100, Fortune 500 type organizations. I think Cortex is something that we always have kind of wanted. It's kind of that, almost dream scenario of being able to do more with your content than just have it sitting in an archive somewhere. That, yeah, of course, if you've got it in an archive, you're being compliant with records management and so on, and you can search for things and retrieve them, but you're not necessarily getting the most out of your content. And so what we're doing with Project Cortex is really trying to, do more than just have it sitting there for search and retrieval, right? Bring the content in context to where you're working. When you're on a web page, you can see things that are highlighted. You can go and you can see a topic in a topic card. You can go and have much better mining of that knowledge and so forth by having all that content indexed and OCR'd and pulling out classifications and metadata and so forth with some of the content services capabilities that we're bringing into the product. From a best practices point of view, we've trained hundreds of people now worldwide, both from the partner side, like at Xillio and at Knowledge Lake, as well as inside of Microsoft, to go out and help our customers implement jointly. And we've also, of course, had a good set of preview customers that have been using the product and so on. I think that we're probably a little early to publish a lot more best practices. We'll wait till it gets into the market, which is coming very soon, as you'll hear about tomorrow at Microsoft Ignite. But we think that it's going to be really, as Rickert said, really a game changer in the industry here, taking a lot of these capabilities that were either really hard to implement and needed special developers who deeply understood AI or deeply understood capture technology or what have you, now taking that into the hands of the regular business user. And so we'll see what customers do with it, and then we'll obviously surface and share more best practices and training and so on as we get going here.
Rebecka, there's a question around how Pi is treated within Cortex. Any views on that? Is she there? Rebecka, I think you're still on mute.
Did you say Pi, Alistair?
Yeah.
She is
Personally
here. It's a little bit dark
identifiable
though in
information.
Sweden. Sorry.
Oh, PII. Okay.
PII.
I was like, Pi. PII. Okay. How is PII treated in Cortex? Rebecka, you're here now, so do you want to answer that one, or I can?
Oh, I am. Yeah, I've been here. I'm just staying off camera because it's really dark, and I don't have a lot of lights in my house yet.
Well, it's always dark in Sweden.
No.
This time of year, it's getting dark.
Well, it is. Yeah, that's true. So how's PII treated with Cortex? Any type of information is treated exactly the same in Cortex as in the rest of Microsoft 365, right? If you do not have permission to see something, you are not going to see it. On the ingestion side and on the AI side, I am going to actually shoot that one back to Ian, because he's a lot deeper into the content services space than I am, than the knowledge discovery and topic space. But I would assume it's the same thing there. It's however you set it up and what you allow it to see, right?
Yep, exactly right. I mean, you could have PII in a document today in SharePoint. Forget about Project Cortex, just sitting there in a document. And, you know, we provide a set of tools from our information protection team that allow you to find that PII, identify it, classify the documents as having PII in them, you know, restrict what can be done with them, who can access them, can they be shared or not, put data loss prevention, DLP, around those documents and information rights management and so on. And since Cortex is built on top of that foundation of what Microsoft 365 provides, all of that just comes along for the ride. So there's nothing special or different you have to do to handle PII with Cortex. And in some ways, Cortex will make it easier because as you go through and you classify documents, when you classify them, you can automatically apply those policies and labels that will you know, protect the PII that's in those documents and so forth. So nothing special that you have to do other than you know, what's already built into M365.
And I guess we should pull out Microsoft Information Protection and how that integrates with Cortex as well, right? In terms of even going as far as encryption of content, like PII content, for instance, if you set it up that way.
Yeah, you can definitely use our information rights management to encrypt the content. All content is encrypted by default, but this would be if the content were pulled out of the system and downloaded onto a device or something. You can control that with IRM and our data loss prevention to make sure that, you know, if that content leaves that device or that device gets into the wild or the person that owns the device is no longer an employee and they don't return their device and so forth, that content is still protected. So all that still applies with Project Cortex.
Yeah, I think the important thing here is that your content repository is still Microsoft 365. So it doesn't matter if it's in the Office 365 substrate, so it's sitting inside of Exchange, or it's sitting inside of Chat, or it's sitting inside of SharePoint. You still have sensitivity labels that come through, you still have retention labels, you still have DLP on the back of that. So if you are using stuff like PI or HIPAA or any of the other sensitive information types that you are applying through the Security and Compliance Center, naturally that still applies. So if the content is either obfuscated because you're not allowing them to view it, or it's redacted through e-discovery, all of those policies still get applied before. You must remember there's security trimming that has always happened inside of SharePoint based on your group membership provider. And that will still continue to happen even though the context is, or the content is pulled through an entity model that is actually generating content on the outside of that for suggestions.
Yep. You confuse me with pie. I've never heard anybody call it pie before. In the States, we always say
it's a South African thing, right?
Pie to me is PIE or PI, like the number pie, right?
Yeah, but it's still got
all about food. They're all about food, Ian, right, Alistair?
Exactly. All right.
So there was another question around topics. Can you link to a Cortex topic when you are creating content also, the opposite of in-context experience? If Simon's on the call, you'll probably have a view on that. And you're on mute.
Here we go. So that's it. Yeah. The perils of being in a car park and joining a live Q&A, right?
And he's frozen.
Yeah, so I would note that.
Am I back now? Yes.
You're back. Yes, you're back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So topics when you create content as well. So yeah, opposite to the in-context experience. So what you can do is you can use Power Automate, and you can create some rules with AI Builder, and you can attach topics or terms from a term store to the content that you create. Is one process flow you could take there. Or also there is a relationship you can establish between the topics that Cortex discovers and mines and topics within your term store. There's a pretty simple feedback loop that allows you to give feedback to the system. So actually these topics don't apply, these ones do. And ultimately the journey will start linking your terms in your term store to the topics that Cortex gets. So you actually have, you know, one term to rule them all point of view, wherever you are in Microsoft 365.
Yep, I would.
Thanks, Simon. One last question to Jason. When we start looking at contextually aware content, Knowledge Lake's been doing it for for years and years, and you've been able to provide that contextually aware content before information actually gets stored in a content repository. From a complementary perspective, we touched earlier on about how Knowledge Lake is actually providing that sort of contextually aware content to improve where Project Cortex is going. A little bit more about where you see that happening?
Yeah, for sure. So inside of Project Cortex, you have these models that you can build to recognize documents and extract important facts. And then you can put them, once you upload them into Microsoft 365 in a certain location, these certain number of models run, and they're great. And like was talked about in the webinar, they're easy to build. And like Naomi said, that once you build them and you sort of get your sort of knowledge about that document into that model, then other people can take it and build from there. But those documents still need to be delivered to Microsoft 365 and into the right location. And so what Knowledge Lake can help do is sort of do some pre-identification or pre-sorting, separating documents from other documents. You know, a lot of times documents will come as a single big PDF and there's really multiple sub-documents inside of it. Separate those out and then deliver those to Microsoft 365 in the right areas so that the right models run to classify and extract the data. So it's a great symbiotic relationship, and yeah, like I said before, I'm thrilled with the direction that Cortex is going.
We have another question around taxonomy management inside of SharePoint Online. Is it a prerequisite? Is getting a good taxonomy in the managed metadata service something that you would want to do up front? Is it key to getting Cortex to be more successful when you start looking at being able to tag content efficiently and effectively without using AI on the back end, or improving the AI's capability of tagging content based on a pre-baked thesaurus or taxonomy?
In my experience,
it's required. Rebecka, you're on mute. I don't think it's required, but I think you will be better off if you start with one that, you know, is well defined and kind of thought through and so forth. You know, you can kind of crowdsource that and build it as you go, or you can start with one and then refine it as you go. I think you're going to be maybe a little more successful if you have a good idea of a taxonomy from the start, which hopefully you have from, you know, having done business for years and years. A lot of folks will look at their, you know, records management practices and their file plans and so forth as a starter for their taxonomies. There are lots of partners out there that provide pre-built taxonomies for different business verticals and so forth as well. So I think you'd be better off with one, but do you have to have one? I don't think you have to. You can certainly grow it as you go too. Simon and Rebecka, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Thanks for letting me know I was on mute. You know, I've spoken to a lot of customers that have been wanting to make a change in terms of their content management or document management, and you know, the effort of having to update their taxonomy or having to create a taxonomy, even though those are large global corporations, because it's sometimes something that we tend to not maintain and do the upkeep on, right, has actually been the main deciding factor for them not to move, not to update, not to modernize, right, because it's perceived as such a big effort. So I would say that you don't have to have it, just like you were saying. If you don't have one, which is rare, then absolutely this is a good way and a good starting point so that you can start finding stuff without having to do that investment of time, etc. But it's definitely a lot better, and it's not in any way saying that Cortex eliminates the taxonomy that you already have, right? It on the contrary, it improves it, it enhances it, and it builds on it. And we are also looking at, in future releases, to be able to upload, for instance, industry standard taxonomies, etc. We know there are, I mean, there are certain industry standards, there are certain industry verticals where and organizations that do provide best practice and guidance around taxonomy for those who haven't created it. So that is something that's on the roadmap and that we're looking at as well.
Look,
Simon, did you want to?
Yeah, I would quickly say that, yes, to the other people's point, sometimes creating a taxonomy is really hard work, and using Cortex as a seeding mechanism can really, really help. And it can really get you to the heartbeat of your organization. We did an experiment. We did the usual thing, go to a community, give me 10 terms that described your community, right? They took about 3 months to come up with a defined list of 10 terms that succinctly describe them, right? Or you could just let Cortex sit there for a little bit, and actually it'll come back with terms that actually matter and relevant to that community based on what they're actually talking about, based on what they're also actually interacting with. And you will get some intersection points between the things that you know as an organization, the things that it's suggestion. And you've got to look at those intersection points and also look at the points where there's a divergence, where you think you know there's a term that describes your organization. Perhaps it's not appearing, right? And look at those things. So it's a really good Kickstarter, and it's a really good way of validating some of the choices you've made about a taxonomy.
Well, so Simon, if I could there, I think, because you're right, anytime I ever talk about taxonomy or metadata or tagging with people, it does seem very scary, very, man, we got to get this right. It's, it's got to be perfect, and it takes a long time, a lot of meetings and a lot of whiteboards and a lot of Excel spreadsheets to try and get it right. But I think that behavior was born out of the previous legacy versions of these products, and that, when you put a taxonomy in place, it was going to exist forever. And I think that was either it was going to live there forever, or it was so hard to do that we had to make sure we got it right the first time. But I think with platforms like Knowledge Lake and Microsoft, SharePoint, Cortex, it doesn't have to be fixed in time forever. It can change and evolve over time. And so I think just getting people past that sort of fear that, oh, we've got to get it right now, because if we have to change it later, it's going to be impossible, is important.
That's a great point. That's a really good point.
Look, I think the terms are used interchangeably, that's a word, but the science behind this and building a quantitative ontology inside of your organization. So what Cortex for me does, it automates your folksonomy creation, not so much your taxonomy creation. And what you can do on the back end of that, and the fact that we have best bets coming through as well, that's very exciting for me, because you could literally throw a body of knowledge at this. So let's say 1 million documents, and it would automate the creation of your folksonomy so that you can turn it into a structured taxonomy. And I'm really excited about being able to do that, where it's going to give me suggestions based on what I have, because like everyone's saying, it takes forever and a day for people to come up with, or people to decide what the definition of the word author actually means when it comes to taxonomy management inside of your organization.
Yeah,
Right.
it's usually that getting everyone to agree on the definition of a specific term that is the most energy consuming and frustrating part of taxonomy work.
Yeah, I've spent 3 weeks in a room with a petroleum company talking about the definition of the word author.
I am so sorry. You'll never get those 3 weeks of your life back.
No, I won't. But it was fun talking about Dublin Core and speaking to librarians about all of these things, right? Yeah, DCMI for the win. Anyway, thank you everyone for sticking around. Just a big shout out to Xillio and Knowledge Lake for getting together and putting together this webinar, and then also for Microsoft, everyone from Microsoft, and a special word of thanks for Simon Denton spending time with us in his car today. And I'm sure we'll catch everyone soon. Be on the lookout for an email sending across the link to the recording of the webinar, and we'll chat to everyone soon. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks for an excellent moderating job, Alistair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for staying up late. Rebecca and Simon being in the car, that's above and beyond. So thank you all.
Okay.
Night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.